Let's get started. As we were going over our notes yesterday, I realized this is some really exciting stuff.
Maybe later on. Not in.
Okay. All right. So yesterday we was talking about some shit. But first of all, we were talking about Reconstruction. Once again, Reconstruction. Another way of thinking about that is how America rebuilt itself after the Civil War. Reconstruction. There were many different types of Reconstruction plans that were set forth. Lincoln, he had a plan. He's like, yo, I love everybody. I'm Abraham Lincoln. I'm probably really high on ecstasy right now. And I love everybody. So how about we pardon everybody? What do you guys think? Everyone's like, I don't know, Mr. Lincoln. No. That was one plan. Second plan by the radical Republicans. They're like, yo, I have a plan. Well, whatever we do, we support the blacks. So just in case, like, we get to win like the South, and we're always going to be politically protected in the South. And they're like, okay, that's also a plan. Andrew Johnson was the president that took over after Lincoln was assassinated. He also had a plan, but he said, let's not be so forgiving. What about like these slave owners and these generals? Let's kind of like not pardon them. That's kind of fucked up what they did and stuff. And I'm just gonna go fuck into the last one. Oh, I'm sorry, let me mention this right here. Freemen's Bureau is just set up for blacks so they can be educated and stuff like that, because remember they're free and stuff. But they did this like the first time that they were ever like free, so they don't have education, all that stuff. And then there was also a series of laws that were passed to make sure that they were able to vote and be constitutionally protected. And the radical Republicans, when we left off 2 days ago, they had this thing called military reconstruction, and that's when military bases were actually set up in the South. Military bases, like army bases that we have in like Iraq and Afghanistan, were set up in the South to make sure that they were doing their shit. They were making sure that blacks are voting, because they didn't trust them because they're white and they're pretty fucked up. Yesterday we talked about Southern reaction to all this shit. Southerners, they really didn't like the Northerners. They thought they were about to exploit them. They called them really bad names, like scallywags and carpetbaggers, and then there's just derogatory names, like you're coming here to like explore us.
Explore us?
Exploit us.
This is not Dora.
And also during this time period, there were a bunch of like blacks who were being incorporated into the political process. They were starting to vote and start their own like coalitions for voting. But the most important part was the formation of this reactionary group, this reactionary terrorist group known as the Ku Klux Klan. Ku Klux Klan, the KKK. KKC? I'm so sorry. So that's where we left off. That's where we left off last time. So today we're talking about how Reconstruction actually fucked up. So remember, during the policies that we had during the Reconstruction policies that we had were this military Reconstruction that the radical Republicans actually set forth, where there's military bases, and they also wanted to incorporate blacks. So they felt like they had the South pretty secure. But after Johnson administration, this Republican named Grant came in. He's the guy on the $50 bill. And he was not that great at his job. The first slide talks about this sort of scandal that happened, known as the Whiskey Ring. And pretty much what happened was that Grant's secretary was involved in this like scandal to like pretty much like bootleg a bunch of like or like free trade, like whiskey. So his administration was involved with that shit. But also, there was a really bad economic disaster known as the Panic of 1873, where a bunch of people lost their jobs and homes and farms, and banks ended up closing. So you have these two major factors that are kind of working against Reconstruction Republicans and the Grant administration. You have one, terrible financial collapse, an economic collapse, and two, you have some other thing that I just said. Oh, a scandal involving like whiskey, which is really bad during that time period. So what ends up happening is because of the scandal and the economic downturn, Democrats started to gain more and more seats in Congress. And it made it really, really hard for the Republicans to kind of like carry out the rest of the policies they wanted for Reconstruction. And blah, 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 blah. It says by 1876, Democrats had control of most of the southern legislature. So there were like intimidation tactics that were used by the KKK, but also the Republican Party was becoming really, really unpopular because one, they couldn't manage the economy, which is like kind of like a national responsibility, and two, they were kind of like caught up with a lot of scandals. So the Democrats ended up winning the South. The Republicans were not able to motherfucking win the South. So what ends up happening is this kind of like important thing right here, if I can read it. Motherfucking here. So what ends up happening is there's going to be a Republican candidate in the election of 1877. It's called the Compromise of 1877. There's going to be a Republican candidate known as Rutherford B. Hayes, and this other guy by the Democrats. His name is Samuel Tilden. So what ends up happening is none of them are able to win the majority of the Electoral College. So remember, we talked about the election in 1800. We were talking about Thomas Jefferson and Aaron Burr, and they weren't able to, or they were actually tied for the Electoral College votes. So they weren't able to actually win the election. So the same thing happens over here during this time period. They weren't able to get a majority of the votes. No one was able to get a majority. They were able to get a plurality. But what you need to do in order to become president is you need 50% plus one vote. None of them were able to do it. So what ends up happening is they make a deal. This is kind of like a secret deal. It's debated by historians, but pretty much what they said was, we will, as Congress, because what happens is there's a special election by Congress, and they're like, yo, we're Democrats, we rule Congress, but we will allow you, Rutherford B. Hayes, to become president. We're going to vote for you as long as you take out those military troops out of the South. Since we're mostly in the South, we're Democratic Republicans, or Democratic Republicans were usually in the South, and they became the Democratic Party. They were like, yo, we'll let you fuck with the presidency, but you need to like get these people out of here because we really don't fuck with military people out of the South, or in the South. So what ends up happening is Hayes becomes the president, but then after that, shortly after his election, he kind of like abandons his Republican policies about military reconstruction, and he's like,